boys are back.
Dun 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 dun. Hello and welcome back to the Hellhades.com podcast, brought to you by Fiction and Saphira. Today's episode is kind of a bonus episode, so we're here on episode 2.5. As many of you guys may have noticed, we didn't have an episode go out over the past 2 weeks, which I do apologise for. To give you a brief rundown before we get started into today's episode and have a chat about the things that we've had going on, I thought I'd just kind of put a thanks out to everyone within the community. So for those that are listening on the podcast and haven't been involved in the Twitch chat and YouTube and things like that, over the past few months, sadly, my girlfriend, since I was 13 years old, so nearly 20 years, which is insane to think of, has been suffering with a brain tumour for quite a few years now. And sadly, over the past few months, she's massively gone downhill. And unfortunately, in December, they told us that it was no longer treatable. It was 2 weeks ago now, unfortunately she passed away very peacefully, but yeah, so I've had a lot to deal with, I think understandably, but honestly the support that I've had from this community has been insane. Hellhades put out a fundraiser to help me out with the funeral costs and things like that, because unfortunately not many 30-year-olds, I guess, are prepared for something like this, and we didn't have any life insurance or anything like that. So yeah, it's been insane. You know, yeah, you guys really stepped up, and I think that the total figure raised was literally £8,000, which has been raised by the community, and it honestly meant the world to us as a family. Just to let you know that did literally cover every single penny that we had to spend on the funeral. And with the money that's actually left over, I'm going to be taking my kids away over the summer, and giving them a little bit of time to process what's been happening. So yeah, I just wanted to put out a massive thanks, and obviously that's why we haven't had episodes over the past 2 weeks. However, we are back. We are back. And we'll be going back to our usual scheduling of a recording once a week. This one, the bonus episode, will be going out earlier in the week, and then we'll resume our usual process of either every Friday or Saturday. There'll be a new episode uploaded to Spotify. Paul, you guys have obviously been massively holding the fort for me on the Hellhades.com website whilst I've been dealing with things. I've literally taken withdrawal symptoms, I think, from what's been going on. So, how have you guys been coping over the past couple of weeks? What's new in the world of Hellhades.com?
Yeah, good. I just want to have a quick tangent, and it just really kind of say, you know, it makes me proud to be part of a community that when someone is struggling, everyone is willing to step up and do their bit to help you out. I know for a fact you'd never ask for any help unless you really needed it, and you wouldn't expect any of this. But I was really pleased to see that, you know, when people really respect and understand, you know, your role in the community and are willing to sort of put their hand in their pocket and help someone out. So yeah, it was really, really heartwarming to see that not everything on the internet needs to be doom and gloom and bad and negative. You know, there's plenty of good people out there who sort of support each other, and that's really what the internet's for. That's what the communities are for, is helping each other out and develop. So I just wanted to put that on a caveat.
Yeah, no, I do
good
appreciate
job,
that.
Community. Good job.
This community is insane, and you know, what you said there is exactly true. You know, Hellhades actually said to me, because I was talking about to him the morning that it happened, and I just explained what the situation was. You know, and you know, I said that I'm going to be disappearing for a bit, and then you know, I don't know if any of you have been through this sort of situation, it basically within hours you need to fork out money, and it's actually it's not a very pleasant situation either, because you've had somebody pass away, you're trying to process that, you're trying to deal with that, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody saying, well, actually, not to be rude or blunt about this, but you're going to have to pay 50% of these fees now.
Honestly, it's like, what's wrong with the world?
I know. And I was talking,
it's inhumane, right? Yeah, it's like any situation you would basically say to people, you would never have that conversation, but it's almost like that's the way the world works. It's unreal.
And I was talking to Hellhades about it, and he said obviously we'd arranged to get it covered, because I just didn't have it in the bank at the end of the day.
It's not something you prepare for, really, and especially you wouldn't think it would cost as much as it does.
It's insane. When they told me how much I had to fork out, I was just like, yikes. Okay. But yeah,
it's another stress to deal with, right?
And then, that evening, Hellhades messaged me, and he said, I've had a couple of messages from the community, people asking if there's a way that they can help and things like that. And he said, would I be offended if he was to put like a fundraiser together? And I said, it's not something that personally I would usually ask for, but I certainly wouldn't be offended if he wanted to, do that as a gesture. And I mean, the support that we got was just mind-blowing. I don't think any of us could have possibly thought
that it was a really good testament to the community that that when things really matter, all the nonsense that happens in the world about pay to win and all this other stuff goes out the window, and people just go, do you know what, I've got a bit of money, I can help out here. And it's not even the big donations, because some people did put a load of money down, and I was really surprised. But it's the people that came in with a message of $5 saying, I don't have much, but here's something, I hope it helps.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm thinking about your family. Like, that to me is, if I was ever in your situation, I don't know how I'd cope with all these people doing that for me.
I had to be careful reading through the comments, because, I've been trying to maintain a solid composure for my kids and things like that, and just organize everything. And it was rough looking through them, because I mean, there is so many caring people out there, and even my Discord, my messages were off the chart with support from people. So I'm lucky to be surrounded by such a nice community, and as well as that, a supportive team. The guys at the other guys at Hellhades.com, including Paul, really stepped up to cover my workload, which allowed me to effectively have 2 weeks to just focus on my family and organizing things. And I can't show enough gratitude to how thankful I am that I've got this kind of support around me.
You're most welcome. Right then, shall we get on with more different stuff? Let's talk about what's going on in the world of Hellhades.com.
Yeah.
So we've done, whilst you were on your hiatus.
Yep.
We released brand new tier lists. Finally.
Nice.
Long project we've been talking about internally to release a brand new tier list, which is fully functional for filtering and sorting, and much quicker, much more colourful, a bit more picturesque.
Yes. So aside from the visual aspect of it, what you've actually done is massively speed up the way that people search as well, haven't you?
Like the problem with the old tier list was it was great. It gave you a table, gave you a list, wonderful. But when I was approaching it, I was thinking, as a player who plays the game themselves, it's like, right, well, I've got a secret room. I need to find a spirit champion that does a lot of damage, or I need to find specific factions to do a specific thing. There's right now a dragon tournament right on, and I used it today. I basically went and I was like, I need someone from the Skinwalker, Orcs, Lizardmen, or Ogryn factions who's got a 3 on dragon. Like the old tier list couldn't do that.
No.
You'd have to filter and sort. You could sort by dragon.
Yep.
But it wasn't great. So the goal really was to basically answer the questions that would be posed by playing the game.
Do you want to hear a fun story about the original tier list, or the old tier list that we had on the site?
the pro table, as it's called.
Yeah, so we launched the website on the 1st of December, which I'm sure you remember.
Yes.
And literally the evening before that, after we'd input all of the character data and things like that, we did not have a tier list, and the site was going to go live without a tier list.
Oh boy.
However, I stayed up until about 3 a.m. looking for a plugin or something that would streamline that process. And I found it, I want to say at about 5 a.m, installed it, and literally had it ready. And Hellhades never knew that we'd had that implemented at that time, and it wasn't until he got up in the morning and we were going live at 9 o'clock in the morning
Like,
that
hey
he
guys,
saw
put
it.
a tier list.
Yeah. So, and by the way, I did add the tier list, and it served its purpose. But as with a lot of things on the site, we've grown to a point now where we've just kind of outgrown the original processes. We never thought the site would have, a string of employees. It would have so many different things that you could do on it now. At the time we didn't even know we didn't have the optimizer.
Exactly. I mean, people expect more from it now, so obviously it's got to cope with what people expect. Otherwise, people are going to go looking elsewhere, or they might find a different solution. And
we wouldn't
as much
want
as
that,
a
would we?
spreadsheet or a table is good, it's not really what it's not what people want.
No.
So yeah,
and I think a lot of people say that, I like to have the spreadsheets and things like that. It's like, well, the thing is, the actual functionality of a spreadsheet is so limited in terms of the data that it's pulling and things like that. And what you've created with our new tier list is it's pulling the data from our website. So we're live updating these champions and things like that, and it's all pulling through that data. And you're not going to have that problem of having an out-of-date tier list, which you would if you were to download, an Excel spreadsheet.
Exactly. And I can see the merits, and to be honest, if people want to jump into the Discord channel and start requesting it more, if enough people really want to have some sort of export function, then obviously we will 100% look at it. But I think...
Don't give them ideas.
I think we'd rather have people using the site, so if there's a reason why they want the functionality, I'm more interested in hearing why they need the export function rather than providing it and moving on, because there obviously must be a reason behind wanting it. And if that's something we can implement in the site and implement in the tier list and continue to develop, then for me that's a better outcome, because everyone benefits from the same idea rather than just one person.
Sure.
And that one person is also brought into the fold rather than feeling excluded. So overall it's a better outcome for people.
Yeah.
And I think a big thing with these new tier lists, because there's also the Faction Wars tier lists that we haven't spoken about, but we've released. It's just the first step. Now that we've got the framework and the placeholder for the new sort of version 2 tier list, the future holds the ability to go in and say, I need someone who does decrease defense on an AoE. Or I need someone who does decrease attack on an A1. That kind of very, very specific requirements will come in handy for a lot of people. Right now, they probably do it based on knowledge, whereas sometimes you might want to just know. The secret rooms are a great example. So far, we've had two rotations. I'd imagine we'll get a third rotation at some point.
Yep.
Whether or not that includes new bosses or whatnot, but I'd imagine it'll include new secret rooms. So right now, there's one going on where you've got to complete rare spirit champions. So you're going into there and thinking, well, I don't really use that many rare champions, let alone rare spirit.
Yep.
So you still need to fill the criteria of who's my damage dealer, who's my debuffer, who's my control champion. Those questions will get posed to players, and you're not going to, with a champion pool of 530 odd or 520 odd champions, you're not going to be able to know every champion ability in the game.
Absolutely not. And these are champions where you wouldn't be using them anywhere else as well, because there's just better alternatives.
What you actually find is some of these champions are actually not as bad as you once thought. When we were looking at the Faction Wars tier list, obviously the previous spreadsheet had the sort of highlight champions.
Yep.
So that, like, the handful of champions in the faction that were considered good, worth investing in, etc. The new tier list obviously includes every champion in the faction, so we had to go in and grade 500 odd champions across all their different abilities, about whether they could do damage, whether they could support the team, whether they can do crowd control, decrease defense, decrease attack, revive. And we found some champions just sit there and you think, wow, that's crazy for a rare champion to have. You know, some champions where they've got like equalized HP. It's a rare, I think, that has the same thing that Sinead does, where she equalizes HP. It's like one of the most powerful abilities in the right situations. So sometimes it's handy or it's interesting to go looking at these different champions and going, oh, actually that's not as bad as I thought on paper. Or one champion does significantly more damage. You know, people like Necro Hunter technically do a lot of damage. It's very difficult to find the use for them because of the nature of what they are, and they're generally better. Yeah, it doesn't mean that in a specific situation they can't be used. So,
and I guess as well as that, it solely depends on the account because absolutely. You know, I think too many people get caught up, and we brought this up multiple times, that too many people in Raid Shadow Legends get caught up with the color of the portrait. You know, too many people are looking for those legendaries, and then, you know, all you need to do is like actually drill down, and you look at champions like Armaga, for instance, who's, you know, mind blowing. Sat in his little common skin, and you know, somebody who's new to the game may not realize just quite how good he is.
It's the default perception that legendary must be good. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a debate that was happening in Discord the other day.
Tell that to Crypt King.
Well, Crypt King's actually quite good in the new Spider. So there's a use for every champion everywhere.
I've got 3 of them.
Yeah, you don't need 3. I've got 3 Creelers, and I don't need 3 of those either. But we are in a debate in Discord about this perception in the community that a legendary champion must be good, or must be god tier at something.
Yeah.
One specific area of the game they must be the best at. And I'm like, well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of generalist champions that do a lot of good things, but none of it like great. But they're still good champions.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't say Creela is god tier at anything. Like, yes, she's got an ally attack, but it's hardly god tier because it's 4 out of 5, and you can never control which 4, and you have to book it. But
and you've got champions like Longbeard that just do a better job at it.
Cardiel. Now, if you've got some basically interview doing like a tier list of ally attacks, she's not really near the top anymore for an ally attacker. She is for the fact that she brings Hooray 3 buffs.
Yeah.
And the fact it's stat. Not dismissing that she isn't a really good ally attacker. It's this notion that should a champion be god tier? If a champion is god tier, or more to the case, should a legendary champion have one particular aspect of its kit that is god tier? And for me, I don't think that's necessarily a requirement.
No, and I think the champion pool is too big for that as well now. There's too many legendaries.
Yeah, you can see like they're doing it. We haven't hit a point yet where there's too much carbon copying. No. So far, they're able to release new and innovative champions. Like the last patch, we had a champion that converted resistance into accuracy. So therefore, you could build it differently. So it did something different. It still had like that, you know, I'm talking about Helior, the whale champion that everyone could have got if they wanted to spend an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
But, you know, his kit, even though he still had like a Minya Sugar, he still had like a different thing. He still had some uniqueness in his kit that meant he wasn't just a carbon copy, even though he copied some elements. So I think they're doing quite well to try and bring out new different types of champions. I'm thinking the likes like Charney as well, where she converted some accuracy into crit chance, even though it wasn't a lot. So they're coming out with new ideas. I don't really think there's a need that one champion has to be excellent or god tier in one particular area of the game, because sometimes having a good generalist is worth its weight in gold. And again, as you said, it depends on the account progression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
One legendary champion for someone like me or you, where we've got like a lot more champions, might go, well, it's a legendary, but it doesn't really add much. But for someone in the mid game, that champion might go in every single team that they've got.
Exactly. If you think about the first legendary that you got, so the first legendary that I pulled was Yannicka. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I bought her when I was level 37. I still remember it. And I used her right up until, I mean, even now I still use her. But, you know, she's probably, although she is strong, don't get me wrong, she is very strong, she's not one of the champions that people hype about. She's not the one that you're going to see streamers and YouTubers jumping up and down because they got themselves a Yannicka. But she is so good, and she literally transformed my account. it just highlights, how important that, having a champion to suit your account rather than just, the current meta champion that everybody wants.
And I think also there's this notion of OG champions versus new champions. Obviously, Plarium need to create new champions and release them, and they have to be better than what's already there to some extent. Otherwise, what's the point of pulling shards? You know? So there's always going to be this kind of scaling issue in place where some champions get left behind. They probably need to start doing more rebalancing than they do releasing. But then that's a difficult
But that's
balance.
Boring.
Well, it's a difficult
That just
balance,
upsets people.
I think if you look at a game like League of Legends, they had a similar problem where at one point they were releasing like 10, 15 champions a year. And it got to the point where people were like, it's just another AD carry. It's just another mid laner.
Yeah.
What happens? What about my Dr. Mundo that's been sat in purgatory, hasn't had new skin for like 3 years and all this kind of stuff. And they moved away from having so many new releases and actually going back to doing major reworks. They've struck a nice balance where they release one champion for every role every year. So they get like 5 or 6 new champions.
Yep.
But they also then release about 5 to 10 reworks, or even if it's just a visual update, it feels like you're keeping your old roster fresh. So I think Plarium will need to soon start doing a lot of rebalancing of the older champions, the champions that have been left behind, some of the original legendaries, because otherwise you end up in this position where I'm only chasing the new legendaries and stuff that I've invested in is no longer worth keeping.
Yeah,
which is fine as long as that doesn't become a majority situation.
But I guess as well, it's actually a different game to when it first came out as well.
Yes,
there's especially if you look at the early on legendaries, they may not be applicable in anywhere in the game now because the game's just progressed that far that they've almost been left behind.
It's those things where it's like a legendary might have 75% chance to do something where an epic has 100% chance.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Kind of like those situations, and actually a lot of them are easy to fix. You just basically go through all those legendaries and go, do you know what? Just going to give you 100%. It's not going to break the game, but it's going to make you potentially more viable. It's not going to make the epics unviable because normally there's something else involved, in them. If you think something like Stag Knight, at one point Stag Knight was 100% chance to do decreased attack and decreased defense, and then you had someone like a Bess who was 75% chance.
Yeah, logic.
And that was 75% chance after books. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, if an epic can do what the legendary does,
that's the other thing
better,
as well, isn't it? Book value.
Yes, and I think let's not make legendaries with 18 books because that's a bit silly. I'm all for epics maybe being like 15 books because epic books are far easier to get hold of, but legendary books should not be 18 per fusion because you work your backside off to get a fusion champion that's a legendary, and then you got to work another 4 months just to if you're completely free
be able
to play,
to use it,
just to be able to use it, because arguably champions like Lydia's a great example. You work super hard to get Lydia, like probably 2 years of your potentially a year and a half year, depending on how much you pay, how much you progress, what luck you have.
Yep.
Until you book her, she is kind of useless because you just can't rely on the debuffs.
Yeah,
it's not frequent enough. Everything just feels awkward. So that if you're trying to tune a Seer comp, you can't because you just don't know when you're going to have the buffs up. She feels really kind of awkward, and the moment you book her, it's like a different champion, and everything becomes so much easier. So, they got to balance that. But yeah, it was an interesting debate in Discord in the sense of some people's perceptions of a champion is like, oh, why would you invest in it? It's a waste. And then obviously, from personal experience, it's like, well, no, because that one champion carries X, Y, Z. For an account that doesn't have X, Y, Z, this one champion is great. You might invest and throw it out in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
But if that champion gets you from Nightmare Clan Boss to Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss, or gets you from Dragon 10 to Dragon 20, that gets you further towards Arbiter, these progression steps are more valuable than investing in one champion.
Awesome.
So it's really interesting to see the progression.
Just diverting back onto the tier list. So in addition to the main tier list, which has been updated on the site, we've also got the faction wars, which is done on the same sort of principle, by a lot of things.
Yeah, so obviously with the faction wars tier list, the grading concept is different. You know, when we're talking about dungeons, it's 1 to 5 or point with 0.5 intervals.
Yep.
Because you're basically grading it that way. Whereas because of the way that the old spreadsheet that Hellhades had set up was structured, we kind of retained that concept. We just updated it so that everything matched with other parts that were, you know, okay through to godlike, like the artifact enhancement.
Sure.
So we're basically looking at it and going like, okay, so from a damage point of view, what are they good at? Okay, well, they haven't got any godlike damage abilities, so they're not immediately godlike. They're all single targets, so they're probably great. Whereas if they had like a strong AoE with a strong single target, then they might become legendary. So
Of course,
the way that we structured it was like that. And obviously if a champion is unable to do the role, then obviously it's just a dash in there. So it helps when you look at it then. And the fact that every faction has their own tier list, I think is easier than having just a massive tier list. I've seen a few people say, can we get overall rating back on the main tier list? And we deliberately took it off because arguably overall rating doesn't inform you about why they're good.
Correct.
It's a bit
and that's been a lot of
dungeon.
controversy with tier lists as a whole, is, you know,
Yeah.
putting out an overall rating. Yeah, it gives you a general idea of the champion, but, you know, the game is too diverse. You need champions for different areas of the game. Saying, oh, this champion's a 5 versus this champion who's a 3, but that champion may be a 5 right where you need it to be.
So we had an interesting thing. I was coming up with a solution for that, or trying to, where I was thinking, okay, so I've got like a champion like let's see, who was I doing at the time? I think it was Septimus. Septimus is great. So arguably, if you got Septimus, he goes in your faction wars team.
Yep.
Great champion. However, it's like, how do you rank him overall? So one solution would be to take all the scores, so basically convert godlike and that into 1 to 5, add them all up, and then make that your overall rating. But then you quickly realize that a champion who is excellent in one area but not an overall good gets worse scores than a champion who's top. So it's quite difficult. I think in the end what we basically agreed on was kind of like adding up all the different roles and then ordering the table by that, because what we didn't want to do is just have a table alphabetically sorted with a bunch of rare champions at the top that didn't do anything.
Yep.
Because that was awkward. So in the end we did that, and I think there's value in an overall aggregation. So basically a score that's made up of every other score.
Yep.
Rather than an arbitrary independent overall. We see that on the main tier lists where the dungeon scores are added together and averaged over the 4 to give an overall dungeon. So it gives you kind of an idea of overall in each area, what are they good at. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should disregard someone because they've got an overall 3 when they have a 5 in Spider.
Sure.
However, if you're looking for that decision of overall how much is this going to help my account, am I in the position of my account right now where I want to specialize on champions, or am I still looking for improvements into general champions?
Got it, yeah.
That kind of overall rating has really helped. And I think some of the criticisms in the past on tier lists about overall rating have been a bit too political and a bit too self-thought, in the sense that I myself have an opinion on what the score should be. Therefore, because this tier list now says it should be 9, I think it's higher or something like that. You know?
Yeah,
so I
sure.
think some of the feedback and the emotional responses to that has been sort of from a political, personal point of view. But I do think there's value in overall ratings. It's just ensuring that everyone is on the same page about what the rating means.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that, to be honest, because, you know, as we saw in the past, yes, everyone has an opinion and things like that, but you know, I guess as well as that, you need to know the demographic that you're looking to help with this, because, you know, at the end of the day, an elite top end platinum player in this game does not need a tier list, or shouldn't need a tier list.
Or shouldn't rely on the tier list.
Yeah,
that would be a better word. Like, don't take it as written law.
But new players to the game, you know, they may not do the research. They may not have all of that answers. They may not have the experience with every champion in the game. and giving them a rough idea as to, oh, this champion I've pulled, should I eat it or should I keep it? Where can it help me in the game? Having that number there, can be helpful. At the same time, obviously, it can be dangerous as well because there's very niche champions that may score low and things like that. But, as you said, I think that's why we need to make sure that it's diverse enough and pulls enough data and enough points of data entry to be able to determine, what is a good rating to give a champion and what isn't. But yeah, it's never going to be perfect. We'll try our best.
I think generally people are, without sounding mean, quite lazy about things.
Yep.
So a new update comes out, a champion's out, and immediately we see these messages like, what do you think about it? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, firstly, the patch isn't out. Secondly, we only can judge it based on what the skills say. So it's kind of like people want that like immediate, just give me the Hellhades notes.
Yeah.
Tell me off the top of the list, what do you think? And it's almost like we're, to be fair to the site, to Hellhades, we get these pages up and we get some initial thoughts out there.
Yeah.
But we don't really like to do it until we've had a play test of some sort.
Correct.
So it takes a few days. But, so what I think the site does really well is it kind of gives people an overall initial impression. But there's lots of different features in there that kind of highlight, we've got the MVP section. So if someone is really good at Spider, it says it's really good at Spider. And that's something we want to bring to the tier list in the future. Being able to filter on MVPs.
That would be cool.
Things like, I had one situation in the past where someone basically had direct messaged me to say, I've had to spend 10 million silver because I followed your recommended artifacts and now they're wrong. And I'm like, well, okay, firstly, they're recommended.
Yeah.
And he was like saying, well, you said to get accuracy first. I was like, no. The list is a list of good artifact sets, not in order of the way you should build your champion.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult sometimes because what you don't want to do is over-translate. You don't want to overwrite to the extent where you're almost writing an essay to explain how you should build a champion, because that is just not a great experience for anyone visiting a website if it's a wall of text.
True.
But at the same time, it's very difficult to meet everyone's demands, and we
just
never
put in
want to
every possible
anyone.
variation that it could be interpreted.
Like
but,
we know for a fact that the masteries on the champion pages, that's our next big project to really improve upon, because at the moment they're too kind of archetypal in the sense that they fit general roles, but obviously we get a lot of people send us messages saying, oh, I think it should be this, and again, as you said, if you disagree with the mastery, that you don't have to follow the website. The website gives you an idea of where you should be looking. Yeah. If they're 100% wrong, great. But I don't think we've ever had a situation that much where mastery is like 100% not going to do the job that you need it the champion to do.
I know we did have a slight bug when we did an update on the website a few months ago, but we went through and resolved that pretty quickly.
Oh yes, that was a fun one.
Yeah. But aside from that, they are just general cookie cutter builds, and I think most people do understand that, but as you hinted at there, I think it is something that we do want to look at, to have different options, because the thing is, the way that you build somebody, depending on how you're going to use it in the game, is completely different. Are you building a specialist, or are you building just an all-round champion that you can kind of chuck into a team anywhere and it's going to do its job to a point, but not to its full potential?
Yeah, and I think when we released the website, cookie cutter builds actually were quite specifically fine, so we didn't have Doom Tower, didn't have secret rooms, we didn't have all these extra things involved in the game. Now, so you could basically say, okay, well, you got Dragon 20, so that's the same kind of accuracy and speed and resistance you need for Ice Golem 20, for Spider 20, for all these other different dungeons. Now it's kind of like, well, Doom Tower normal is different to Doom Tower lower hard. Doom Tower upper hard is significantly more, different builds required to lower hard. You've got secret rooms all requiring different speeds and different affinities. You've got 21 to 25 now requiring different strategies. You have to build things differently. So it's, how do we now go forward with the website to ensure that we cover all the bases without it becoming overly way too specific? There was a discussion this morning on the the recommended artifacts. One idea that we have potentially is linking to the optimizer, so you can almost click on a preset.
Yep.
So the website will basically say, here's a good preset. But it's kind of like, well, how many presets do you have? Because you might want one for Clan Boss. Well, Clan Boss, there could be any number of different tunes. Is it unkillable? Is it not unkillable? Is it a Valk? Is it 2-1? Is it 3-1? These different rotations, not to mention then Doom Tower
it proves
Hard.
it just by, Deadwood's website is just dedicated to speed tunes.
Absolutely.
He's got
It's
an entire
one of the best
website
resources
for
out
it.
there.
But that's the thing. If we were then to start recommending, you can see how many possible different builds and tunes and things like that you could need. And even from my personal experience, from building, I run a Bat Eater now, which is kind of face roll, but when I was trying to configure my budget and unkillable, it is so finicky, just kind of working out the HP levels versus the defense levels and things like that. It's actually very difficult to do just with a preset that you just load in and hope that it does the job for you. Actually, you kind of need to play around with it a bit.
And the thing is, we don't want to take away from Deadwood's site. If anyone comes to me and says, I need help with this Clan Boss, I was like, well, have you used the Deadwood calculator? Because it's brilliant. It's what you should start with. You should go there. You should go, right, how am I going to build it? What champions am I going to go? Am I going to go for unkillable? Am I going to go for
deadwoodjedi.com?
Yeah, exactly. Shout out. But the calculator, specifically his version 2 calculator, because the version 1 was good, but it had some sort of user interface problems. You had to do double extending and different delays. This new calculator, it's top notch. It does everything for you. It gives you all the things. I'd imagine he's having a bit of a headache now with all the different AI customizations you can do and various different things, trying to build that in. But I send people there because our site is designed to give you a champion's overview. Then the raid optimizer is designed to build the champion to how you want to build it using what you've got in your account, but it doesn't tell you what to build.
Yep.
And that's where, if you're doing a Clan Boss, Deadwood site is perfect for, because it will tell you how and what to build, the rotations, and then you use the optimizer to find those builds. So I think, I think long term we definitely want to get more closer to the presets. I think we've got big updates for the champion pages in the next couple of months to try and bring in, obviously, all the ratings that we've got now, because they're not exposed to the main champion pages. We know that we're looking to get that in as soon as possible. But to just bring sort of all the new systems together and improve upon things and try and make it more clear exactly what you should be doing with champions when you first get them, but not to the extent where we're going to tell you what to do, because if we write it as law, I'll wait for the 101 messages that basically say,
you're wrong.
You're wrong. Why have you done this? I don't agree with this. And then
it's coming anyway.
Exactly. And what we don't want to do is new to the player base's own knowledge, because
no, it takes the fun out of it if you have everything done for you. And
also, I think you lose innovation. People come up with new ideas because necessarily, I heard one person say before, the game is essentially solved. And I'm a strong believer that nothing is ever permanently solved.
No.
There's always new things you can discover.
You only need to look at some of the numbers people are doing on Clan Boss now to know that that's not true.
Exactly. So, to some extent it is solved, but there's always unique ways you can build it. And I think people's desire to find new things in a system where everyone assumes that it's just do this and you win is so important.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, right. Well, let's wrap it up there because we are now at 40-minute mark, which is good. And more to the point, I've literally just had a ping on my phone that Hellhades has just launched a new video, which looks like he's starting a new free-to-play account.
Oh, he isn't.
And I didn't know anything about this, so I'm going to have to go and watch it.
We should put out a caveat right now that just because he's making a free-to-play account doesn't mean that you still need to make the game faster, Plarium. Okay? He hasn't got more time. He's probably just trying to do it to understand our people who are starting new accounts. It's always good to do every now and then.
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
I'm going to go watch the video, and we can talk about. Maybe we'll get Hellhades on in the next episode, and we'll talk about the reasons why. If that is what it was, it may just be clickbait, guys.
Could be.
We'll see. But thank you so much for joining us again, and we are back to the usual schedule. So we will see you in the next episode, either on Friday or Saturday this week, and then back to the weekly schedule.